Hi, everybody. I am really thrilled to be here today to talk to you all about one of my favorite subjects. So, thank you to Whizbang for inviting me into the community. I am a passionate retailer at heart, so I'm excited to be here. I just want to share a little bit more about my journey before we jump into the topic of what I'm here to talk to you about today, just so you know who you're talking to. I actually grew up in a retail store. My mum owned an antique shop. And yes, I grew up on top of an antique shop for many years, and everything in our house was for sale. It had a sticker on it. So I guess I was destined to go into retail for a career. Didn't know that at the time. But went into my first part-time job in a store in Manchester in the UK. So I don't know if any of you are from across the pond. But yeah, had a part-time sales job. And then like a lot of people just ended up sticking with it. Now, I know a lot of you are business owners, so you can see in my career on the left-hand side at the bottom, I've worked with some pretty epic brands, I have to say, and got a ton of really good training as a manager and a leader, which helped us create the RetailU course that I'm going to talk about today. And over the years, I grew in role and grew in store count. And now just get to work and do leadership and management training, which is why RetailU course is on the Whizbang platform to give you access to it. And we've been really happy with the response. So I do work with large retailers, small retailers, independents, and everything in between. But just so you can see my journey, I've done every role. I've been the visual merchandiser. I've ran stores. I've been a store manager and assistant manager, and I worked my way all the way up. And this takes us to where we are now. So I want to jump into the content today to show you what we're going to be talking about. And I know that we have Whizbang on as well. So if there's any questions that come up in the chat, I'd be happy to answer them as well. So what I'm going to be talking to you all about today is 5 things. Number one, the 4 stages of building a high-performing retail team. Number two, I'm going to be talking about accountability and demystifying it. And that's because we all need a really good team when we're running a store. And accountability is one of the number one questions that I get asked about from managers, leaders. How do they hold their team more accountable? I just got an email yesterday from somebody that literally was like, we had this issue over the weekend. The closing checklist wasn't done right. There was no communication. How do we hold the team accountable in a positive way? And I want to demystify that for you today and give you some positive steps that you can apply immediately, which will help you move your team into accountability and ownership. I'm going to talk about that. And then really getting the best out of your team to drive sales and experience. Let's face it, if you're running a retail store, it's tough. It can be really challenging. It's long hours. It's a lot of work. It's not for the faint at heart. And so it's really about getting the best out of your team, right? So that you're not getting burnt out and doing too much. So I'm going to talk about that. And then the top reasons why service-based teams fail, in my experience, I've been running retail stores and working in stores for over 30 years now. And I've seen a lot of reasons why people fail. So I want to talk about that today so that you can avoid it. And then we have an exciting special offer at the end of this on the Retail Brilliance platform. So what I'm sharing with you today is just snippets from some of the courses that you'll get more in depth in and more content in as you go into the Retail Brilliance platform and take those RetailU courses. So with that, we shall get started. So I want to talk first about the 4 stages of a team. Actually, there's 5 stages, but I want to talk about the 4 stages because I think this is really important, especially when you're in a high turnover environment, which happens in the service industry. Traditionally, maybe that's not you, and maybe you've had a team for a very long time. Congratulations, that's amazing. Kudos to you. You're doing something right. But I think it's really helpful for business owners, managers, leaders to understand that there are stages of forming a team. And it's really important to always be assessing where you are in this process so that you can get to the end result or the desired state, which is a high performing team, right? We all want to have a high performing team. And it's one of the things that sometimes get forgotten about in the midst of product, visual displays, payroll constraints, shipments, product, all of this other stuff, marketing, everything that goes into running a retail store. But at the end of the day, if you have a great team, all of those things can get divvied up and delegated to your team. So that's really, really important. But the four stages I'm going to talk about today is the Tuckman model. And it goes into depth in the Teamwork Makes the Dream Work course. But the first stage is when you're forming. And that's when your team's coming together. Roles are kind of unclear, but people are polite and reserved because they're getting to know each other. Now, you may say, well, April, this doesn't apply to me. I've had the same team for a very long time, and we all work exceptionally well together. But if there's a holiday or there's peak times coming up and you hire a new person into your team, then you're at the forming stage again, because every time somebody comes or goes from your team, you are starting at the forming stage because you're forming a new relationship with somebody. So once you get from forming, you move into storming. And storming is where conflicts can arise, tensions can surface, because people are kind of testing their boundaries and challenging each other in terms of personality styles, what you're good at, what your strengths are, where your opportunities are. And so this is kind of the stage where, I always say, like, the truth comes out, right? People get to know each other. And so it's really important to kind of identify where you are in this process. And it's not a negative thing. It's actually a really positive thing when you can start to identify where you are, because you can do something about it. We're going to talk about that in a minute. The third stage is norming. So norming is when the team starts to form, they start to trust each other, trust starts to build, the roles are clear, collaboration improves because everybody kind of gets their groove, right? Like, they're in this routine, they're getting their groove, and they kind of know what everybody else is doing. And the trust starts to form because maybe you've had some honest conversations with each other, and maybe you've held each other a bit accountable to things. So that's when that trust starts to form. And it does take a lot of effort and a lot of work to get to that norming stage and get through the storming stage. And then number 4 is the performing stage. And this is where we want to be, to have great results, great customer experiences. So that's when we're high functioning, clear trust, shared accountability, and aligned and efficient. That's the dream state, okay? However, when anybody ever moves roles in the team, gets promoted, that's a change in the team, or somebody else comes in on a holiday or a peak time, then you go into this adjourning stage. You can see the adjourning stage on the far side, and you're kind of reprocessing and reestablishing those relationships and those clear boundaries. And so you go back to forming. So a lot of times when I work with teams, they are not really aware that they're in a storming phase. And so because they're not aware of it, they can't get out of it. And a lot of times the managers or the owners and the leaders will probably know that they're in the storming phase. The team will as well, because it will feel like they're going home at night, having conversations and, complaining about something that happened at work. And usually that means you're in a storming stage. When you're in a norming to performing, that doesn't happen. You don't go home and talk about work because you've had an amazing day. And the reason why this is so important is because you cannot skip steps. It's not possible, in all of my years of experience of running teams and working with teams, to go from forming to performing. There is a storming and norming in the middle. And so there is a bit of a messy middle, but that doesn't mean it's failure. It just means growth becomes possible if you choose to look at it that way. And I think one of the number one things is to sit and educate your team and let your managers know that this is a thing. This is a model. It's been proven. It's called the Tuckman model. You can definitely find more about this on YouTube to dive deeper. There's some great videos about this. But you can also learn more about this on the RetailU course on Retail Brilliance. So one of the questions I like to ask you all is, where are you now? Where are you now? Are you in forming? Are you a new team? Have you added a new person? Are you a new store or a new location? Are you in the storming stage, like you're trying to bring people together and get them to work together? Are you in the norming stage, like you've got through that and you feel like everything's kind of running pretty smooth? Or are you at the performing stage? And then how do you stay at that performing stage? Right? So that's one of the questions I always ask you. And if there's anybody, willing to put it in the chat, I'd love for you to put it in the chat and just, or write it down on a notepad and think about, where are you? Because that's really important to kind of identify. Like I said, when you can identify where you are, you can do something about it, right? Awesome. There's no right or wrong answer, by the way. It's just an opportunity to be honest about your current state of where you are. So the number one question I always get from people, how do we get to the performing stage, April? What's holding us back from getting to performing? Well, there are 5 pillars that hold people back and teams back to get to the performing stage. And the number one is trust. Okay, so when people don't trust each other, they can't move beyond and get to where they need to go to work together to accomplish those goals. So that's really, really important. Conflict. If there is no honest conflict or there is negative conflict in the team, then it's really hard to move forwards. And conflict is a really positive thing. And in the Retail Brilliance course that we have, the RetailU course, there's a whole 3 lessons on how to deal with conflict. And again, it's one of those number one questions I always get from either business owners or managers on how to deal with an employee that's maybe showing up late or not in dress code, or didn't give that customer the best experience that they could. So this is really, really important that we have frameworks to teach and train our people working together of how to deal with conflict. I'm going to share a quick one with you today. Commitment, obviously, we all need to be committed to the cause. Like, what is the goal? What are we trying to accomplish? Having that commitment from each other and like really committing to those goals and asking in those morning huddles, how committed are we today to reaching our goals or helping our customers? Obviously the results, right? At the end of the day, if you run a retail store or you have a business, it's all about customer experience and driving those positive results, because I always say sales saves everything and it cures everything, that when you're having positive sales. So that's obviously that high performing level. And then the last one is accountability. And I'm going to unpack this a little bit today because the topic of today was accountability. And so we're going to talk about that because that's really important. So really, you have to reflect on where you are, what's keeping you from moving forward in these 5 pillars. And, an exercise I like to do when I'm thinking about my own team or when I'm working with other teams in retail and hospitality is just to get the teams to write down specific behaviors and habits or roadblocks, one idea per sticky note. So you could have a sticky note and you could have a team meeting and introduce these 5 pillars of high performing teams and what derails you, and have people give feedback on some patterns or some habits or some roadblocks that they see, and then you can have a discussion around it. And it's really about focusing on patterns and not people, right? So then you put them under the category and you just kind of talk about it. So this is a really good idea to have as a team meeting if you want to start developing your management skills on your team, so that you can get a life back and have your managers take ownership. So I want to dive into accountability. Accountability is a word that gets thrown around a lot by managers and leaders. And I want to kind of demystify it a little bit because I think it's one of the five that really derails teams from reaching that next level of performance. And I've seen it time and time again because we don't really know what accountability is. If you were going to ask your team today, and maybe if some of you are watching this, what does accountability mean to them? You would probably get about 10 different answers. If you just walk down the street today and just ask 10 people, or if you're at a dinner party and you ask 10 people, what does accountability mean to them? They would give you lots of different answers. And it does mean many things. However, when you're working towards the high performance team that you want so that you can have great sales results, cohesion, great customer experience, there is a systematic approach to accountability that when you put it in your business, everybody's really clear. And we know that when everybody's clear, things start to happen, things start to move because people like clarity. So we need to have a very clearly defined approach to accountability. And we've used this with anybody with one store up to 3,000 stores, and it works every single time. And it's been proven now for about 10 years, this framework. So I'm going to share that with you today. Also, accountability is a mindset. It's a mindset and a skill set, but you must have a mindset around prioritizing training and development because some of the steps in the systematic approach to accountability is making sure that whoever you are delegating things to clearly understands what's expected of them. And that requires training as well as development. And that gets put aside many times when you're busy, you don't have time. Oh, well, there's only one other person that works with me. I know them really well. All of these things that get in the way of us having this mindset of training and development. The third truth of accountability is you don't actually need more information. You actually need more skills, and skills comes with practice. Okay, so skills comes with practice. It's like anything. If you're on a sports team and you're gonna go play in the Olympics, you have to practice every day. I have a girlfriend right now who is literally practicing for the New York Marathon. She's on a training schedule every day, and she is running those miles every day, and she's going to be able to accomplish that goal and get those skills because she's practicing it every day. So it requires that every time a situation comes up, we don't run away from it, we run into it, and we say, this is a time for us to practice our accountability skills, especially if you are an owner and you have managers on your teams or you have multiple stores. This is the time for them to practice their accountability skills so that they can just get that muscle and be able to demonstrate it. And the beauty of that is that when your managers and your leaders, your assistants or your key holder or whoever it is that's in charge when you're not around starts to actually use this systematic approach, they'll be more confident in dealing with situations and people that just may not, just may be challenging right now for them. So that's really important to keep in mind. And then accountability is built by talk, not by talk. It's built by daily practice. So I think I just said that, but I can't reiterate that enough. It's a daily practice. It's not talking about it, right? It's about making sure that we're taking action on it. So the number one truth, there is a systematic approach to accountability. And this systematic approach is so powerful when you start to unpack what this means. And I don't have time to go through the whole wheel in detail today, but I wanted to bring this up because it is, like I said, one of the number one reasons that derails teams when there's no systematic approach. And so that question I asked you earlier about if you were sitting at a dinner table or you asked your team, what does accountability mean to you? And you get 10 different answers. If somebody asks me, I literally say it's a 9-step process that when it's put into practice, everybody has clear expectations and knows what to do. That's it. And everybody on the team takes ownership and makes a decision about what they want to do next because there's a clear framework involved. So, assuming it starts with having the right person in the right place, right? We have the right person in the right place, so we've hired the right person. The next step in accountability is ensuring that whoever is on your team who is being delegated or given a task or, you know, helping a customer on the shop floor, closing the store, hosting an event for you, doing a pop-up, processing a shipment, sending out orders that are for your online customers. It's ensuring that they have a clear understanding of expectations. And do you remember when I said about having that mindset of training and development? That's where this is really key to the success of ownership with the team getting to that performing stage. Because what happens most of the time here is we just tell people what to do and then we walk away. And then afterwards, we're frustrated because things didn't go the way that we wanted them to, or they didn't meet the expectations that we thought they would. And now there's a gap in what we wanted to what they actually did. And this gap can be solved by very simply using show me versus tell me. So if I'm, on your team and you're asking me to do something, you're my manager and you're asking me to do something, just asking me to do something is fine, but the next step should be, okay, walk me through April and show me how you're going to do that, or help me understand what you heard me say. It's kind of like being in a relationship, right? Like one person says one thing, the other person hears another thing, and then there's a gap in communication. I don't know if anybody of you have anybody in your house like that. I have 2 grown-up children now, but when they were younger, there was sometimes some gaps in communication where I would say one thing and they would do another. And that was just because we were talking at each other. So if you spend time and hold on to that mindset of training and development in this step, you will make sure that your team's set up for success. That's really important because you can then validate that they know exactly what is expected of them, which is really important because then you don't have to, you can follow up later and say, hey, I know that you were aware of what was expected. Tell me what happened and what went wrong, right? So that's really, really important. Spending that time and slowing down. This is the number one missed step by most managers, actually. And it's just due to time or assuming that somebody's got it, making an assumption that they've done this before because they've worked in retail before, they know this, making an assumption because they've, done something else really well that you've asked them to do doesn't mean to say in this moment that they understand the task that you're asking them to do. Somebody could be really good at, processing online orders, not so great at greeting customers at the front of the store. So it's about making sure that every time you're asking somebody, you're just really slowing down and having that mindset. And then the third step, which these 2 steps go hand in hand. If you miss these 2 steps, the rest of them are going to be, you're just going to jump around, and you could be very challenged and end up in a loop of just micromanaging and taking on everything yourself. But with the third step, agreeing to mutual consequences if expectations are not met is like so powerful. And a personal example for me, just to show you what this sounds like, is that when I was an assistant manager at Banana Republic back in the day, don't want to say it, a couple decades ago, because I'm aging myself, but a couple decades ago, I had a manager once who said to me, April, you're really, really good on the sales floor and you're really good at, making sure everybody's working with customers and you're really good at coaching and training them. And whenever you're on the sales floor, the conversion's really high, the average basket size is really high. But when it comes to the end of the night and all the administration stuff you have to do, like the banking log and, the closing checklist and the paperwork, you're just not good at it. And every time somebody comes and opens the store after your shift, they're always complaining about it. Like they have to fix your mess. And she said, if you can't fix this situation, you won't get promoted to be a store manager when the time comes for you to be able to. And I'd be really sad about that. So I'm just letting you know in advance that I need you to fix this, because if you don't, this is what's going to happen. So that's literally what step 3 is. If you can't do this, you won't have that, right? What happened to me that night, I went home and I said, man, she's right. And I want to get promoted. So I made an internal decision to come back and put the effort in and take ownership and fix what I was doing wrong. If she had never told me and avoided that conversation in fear of conflict, then I may never have been promoted. And that's happened to me multiple times in my career. And I've had those conversations with people, and I coach people on these 2 steps all day, every day. So if you take anything away from this accountability wheel, it's making sure that number 2 and number 3 you get right. And then I'm going to say number 6 and number 7 is be consistent and be involved is not micromanaging. Being consistent and being involved means that you're just asking for updates, or you're asking them to give you updates on what's happening, what's going on, so that you're there and you're present and you're there to support your people do the best that they can. And then assume nothing. Us human beings, we like to make a lot of assumptions. We just do. We assume so many things about people. And I always say, like, when a customer walks in the store, right, we're always teaching our staff, make sure that you're not judging them, pre-qualifying them, making assumptions, because you never know what somebody's going to buy from you today if you give them a great experience. And so we kind of have to have that same filter with people, just not making assumptions. And then once you go around and you recognize performance, and if the outcome's not successful, then, you've done your part. People always ask me, when is it time to let go of somebody on the team? And the first thing I ask them is, are they clear on the understandings? Do they have a clear understanding of what you expected from them? Like, where's the training? When did you show them what to do? And then sometimes they go, oh, yeah, you're right. They didn't do a good job on this, but I really didn't support them and train them on this. Okay, so go back and do that first. And then you know that they know. Okay, and then number 3, did you tell them that if they didn't do this well or meet your expectations, that they may not get the hours? Because, that's what happens in retail when you don't have a lot of hours. And so a lot of times people will say, no, I actually didn't tell somebody that. So really important, right? Hope this framework helps you kind of demystify what accountability is and see it in a positive way, because it's not a scary conversation. It's not confrontation. It really is just a framework of following a process. And when everybody knows this process, it makes it a lot easier, because we work in a relationship-driven business where relationships run deep. And so sometimes those relationships and those emotions can get in the way of us, just taking action when things are not going well. And then this is another great acronym. And there's 3 lessons on this actually in the Retail Brilliance course. And it's a strategy for conflict. So it literally is, when this happens, it makes me feel, and this is what I need to change. And so this is a great way to give feedback. It's a great way to train your team to be able to give feedback and address conflict. Because remember, like, going back to being in the performing stage, conflict can derail teams from getting to high performance when there's no training around it and nobody knows how to deal with it. And even when you want to give your partner, maybe you're in business with your partner. I know I work with people that are married to their business partner. Sometimes it can be challenging when you're going to have some feedback and talk about things. So this is just a really great way to be able to demonstrate it. So I script this out a lot of times when I'm working with leaders and even for myself, when I need to deliver some feedback and I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable and I'm not sure how to go about it. This just helps me kind of put it down on paper, frame it up so that it's not an accusatory statement because it's using I statements. So if you say you did this, you did that, you this causes somebody to kind of shrink and get really negative energy and not want to be receptive. And so when you can use when this happens, it makes me feel here's what I need, it sounds different because it's an I statement. So there's more of that in the conflict management course, but I think that's just a really key framework that I love to use. So I know we're coming up on time. So one of the things I always ask everybody to do, and there's a lot of this in the RetailU course, is to be really honest and reflect on where you're at, and which we've done. And then second of all, come up with an action plan. I'm all about turning insights into action, right? It's one thing to know things, and then it's another thing to execute on things. So this could be a really good self-reflection exercise or a team activity where you look at the patterns of behavior or the things that you think that you could improve on, and then literally make a start and stop commitment to them. And in the RetailU course, you'll see this at the end of the lessons and at the end of the workbooks that we ask you to start, stop, and continue and make a commitment, right? Commitments on this, the 5 pillars. Make a commitment of things you're going to start doing independently or start doing as a team, stop doing independently or stop doing as a team. And then there's a continue in the RetailU courses. But on here, I just put start and stop. So you could use that, super powerful. And, I've seen these, I don't know, I've seen them pasted in back rooms and break rooms and, text messages. And I use these every day. What am I going to start today and stop today to be more productive? It's a very simple framework. I'm all about simple and ease because then you don't have time if you're running a retail store, right? And why is this all important? Well, the cost of storming. If we stay in storming too long, we can compromise our customer experience. We can confuse teams with mixed signals. We slow down our progress. We drain our collective energy because retail and working in a store and having a great customer experience is an energy. I know when I walk into a store if it feels good or not, and your customers can feel that. We duplicate effort when trust is low. We could be doing multiple things, and that's where payroll can get spent unintendedly or not being as productive as it can be, and that's one of your biggest expenses, right? So I've seen that a lot. But when we reach norming, the teams below thrive because there's a lot more clarity, which means progress accelerates with alignment. The collective energy lifts the mission and the results, like everybody's bought into what you're doing and where you want to take your business. And then we create the conditions for performing to happen. Performing is a natural progression from norming if we are doing all the things right. And that takes us to the end of our presentation today. And I just want to share, I have a few books. You can find them on Amazon for sure. There's a new one coming out all around this positive accountability wheel. And you can also receive a promotional discount. I believe it's a 50% discount on the RetailU courses. I don't know how long for, but I would say I don't know how long for. You'd have to ask Whizbang that, but I would definitely encourage you to check them out on Whizbang Retail.